Tassel cake as the Ravens beat the Detroit Lions and beat them up pretty good, I think, to shock and dismay of some out in the Motown area. This guy covers all things Lions for ESPN and their NFL Nation. We welcome Mike Rothstein back onto the program. You can follow him at Mike Rothstein. That's Rothstein, not like Bruce Springsteen, but pronounced like Bruce Springsteen. And we welcome him back on. Hey, for the Lions, this was a real test, and they sort of failed the test on the road here on Sunday, did they not, Mike?
Oh, without a doubt. They were severely outplayed, especially defensively. They couldn't really handle the play action from Joe Flacco, and I asked the guys about it after the game, and they all said the same thing, that they know the Ravens are a really good running team, so they should expect play action. Got burnt on it a few different times. Offensively, they really struggled early. That's not new for Detroit. They've now had 4 straight games where they've trailed by double digits in the first half. This team has always been a second-half team. It's always relied on Matthew Stafford to come from behind to win. That, for the majority of the season, and really the last 2 seasons, has been a very difficult way to win. In 2016, they were very successful doing that. This year, it has come back to bite them against every good team that they have played where they have trailed, because they've been able to beat the likes of the Browns and the Bears while falling behind. But last week against Minnesota and then against Baltimore, they trailed by double digits, and you're just not going to beat good teams that way. The Lions are finding that out, and now they're really on the brink of playoff elimination with a month left.
Mike, it's amazing for us because all we've done is beaten up on bad teams and backup quarterbacks and Tom Savage and Brett Hundley and all that. The Matt Stafford show was supposed to bring something substantial that the Ravens were going to have to play a better game to beat the Lions. And I can't remember the last time a quarterback completed 20 in a row against the Ravens like ever. Maybe back to like Favre in Green Bay 15 years ago or something crazy like that. But not just that he did it and lost by 24 points. I mean, that's the hardest thing to believe, is that he really did show that, all that the hype about being the highest paid guy and the #1 draft pick and being around through the Schwartz administration and now maybe about to get his second coach fired at this point. He's clearly capable, but I'm not sure that the rest of the package around him is as capable.
It's an interesting question, Nestor, without a doubt. I actually think their passing game, as far as skill positions go, is pretty good. They have 2 good receivers in Marvin Jones and Golden Tate. Both of them have a shot to be 1,000-yard receivers this year. Golden Tate's been one of the most consistent receivers in the NFL since he came to Detroit in 2014. So I look at that and I say, well, no, he's got 2 really good pieces there. Eric Ebron gets a lot of attention negatively in Detroit because he was the number 10 overall pick in that 2014 draft, and they could have taken guys like Aaron Donald, guys like Ryan Shazier, guys like C.J. Mosley, who the Ravens have, guys like Odell Beckham Jr., and they took a tight end who has not had the greatest production in the world, but he's been consistent really the last few weeks, and he's a decent piece. And I don't know if he's going to be a piece of the 2018 puzzle. That still remains to be seen, but he is a guy who at least is getting some more consistency and has shown improvement very slowly, but has shown improvement. Where the Lions have problems offensively is they still have no running game. That's something that Jim Caldwell has never had as a head coach or as a coordinator. That's something that I'm sure Ravens fans remember from when Caldwell was the coordinator there. They just didn't run the ball very well.
Well, that goes back to Barry Sanders and, Billy Simmons before that. I mean, they really haven't.
Well, I mean, you're also talking about, Billy Simmons got hurt. I mean, those are 2 of the better running backs ever, and that's also now 20 years ago. 20, 30 years ago now. The Lions have not had a good running game for a while, but they did have a 1,000-yard rusher in Jim Schwartz last year and Reggie Bush, but they have not had a 100-yard rusher in 64 games. That's 4 full calendar years at this point. That's the entire Jim Caldwell era, and it hasn't mattered who the back has been, whether it's been Reggie Bush, Joyce Bell, Amir Abdullah, Zach Zenner, Theo Riddick, Dwayne Washington, and now Tion Green and Justin Forsett, the former Raven, have all taken a decent amount of snaps as a running back for the Lions, and none of them have gotten 100-yard 100-yard game. I wrote a story last week about this. There are 112 guys, and this was going into Sunday, and I think there were a couple more. I think Peyton Barber got a 100-yard game this week, so that would jump that number up to 113. So 112, 113 guys in the NFL that have had 100-yard games between the time that Reggie Bush ran for 100 yards on Thanksgiving for the Lions in 2013 and now. Think about that number. That's every other team has had at least one 100-yard game. I think only the Colts have even come close to not having one. And that's a big problem for the Lions because if you don't have a consistent rusher, then that puts a lot more pressure on Matthew Stafford, and it really makes the offense more one-dimensional, even if they try to supplement it by throwing short passes to Golden Tate and to the running backs to simulate a running game. But without actually having that running game, it really puts the Lions in a bind. And the fact that their offensive line is really beat up right now and has been for most of the season is another problem. And I think that as well as Stafford has played for most of this year, even though the numbers may not show it, he's not getting any help from the five guys up front and the guys behind him who are supposed to run the ball.
Mike Rothstein covers all things Detroit Lions for ESPN and the worldwide leader in their NFL Nation coverage. You can follow him out on Twitter at Mike Rothstein. This portion of our WNST programming brought to you by Lee Tessier and his team at Keller Williams American Premier Realty. List your home with him and risk nothing. His team's going to get your house sold. That's at leetessier.com. Also, a big shout out to our friends at Costa's Inn. Good enough for the Today Show and my mom. Fat crabs, tasty crab cakes. They got the pit beef running over there, as well as ice cold beer. The legend continues. CostasInn.com, and they do ship those crab cakes even out to Motown for the holidays. Mike, you inked a piece after the game. Blame should go everywhere for this. Given the ownership there and Mrs. Ford and what's going down there in the front office, and I did see on the way in, I was doing a little beer drinking before the game, and I saw a guy with a 57 Lions shirt, and Honolulu blue, and it said on there, the name wasn't like, a name, it was Not Sense 57, and, I mean, there's long struggling Browns fans that I see or whatever, but the Lions forever they've never played in a Super Bowl, they've rarely come close, they don't win playoff games. All of that being said, it's also a place where change has been sort of slow to come always. And, I don't know if Jim Caldwell's safe or not safe or whether he should be. You're there on a more consistent basis. But I did not see a very good football team. I was kind of shocked. I mean, I thought beating the Lions at home in December would represent something for the Ravens. And I think it does because it was a nice three-prong effort that we haven't seen around here and a decent offense out of the Ravens on Sunday. But I am sort of scratching my head a little bit about how good the Lions really are.
I think a lot of people are. They are, and I wrote it, I think on Sunday or on Monday, that they are the definition of a mediocre NFL team. You never know what you're going to get from them from week to let me rephrase that. You know what you're going to get from them from week to week, but you never know whether or not it's going to be enough to win. You know they're going to start slow. You know they're going to come back and make it a game. And there have been few times this year where they have actually put together complete performances. The win at the Giants in week 2, the win at the Packers in week 9. Both those games actually on Monday Night Football, so maybe they should just play 16 Monday Night Football games this year because they seem to be doing really well there. However, for the majority of the year, it's just been an inconsistent thing as far as what team you're going to get offensively, what team you're going to get defensively, when it's going to show up, is it going to show up in time to make a run, and why does that not show up early? A lot of that has to do, I think, with strategy, and a lot of it has to do with Jim Caldwell. Jim Caldwell took the blame after the loss for pretty much everything on Sunday, and he should, because last week, before the Ravens game, they did some things differently to try and shake up practices, to really try to get the offense going earlier, get the defense going earlier. And as you saw, it didn't work at all. And now 4 straight games with that. You're going to Tampa Bay this weekend. And really for any shot of the playoffs for the Lions, they have to win out and get some help. And you could be a 10-6. That's the thing with Detroit this year. They can be a 10-6 team if they win out. And they still need help to get into the playoffs.
And they would have lost to the Falcons and the Panthers and some of the other likely teams that they would be seeing.
Right. That's why they need the help, because they don't hold the head-to-head tiebreaker against Atlanta, against Carolina, against New Orleans. If New Orleans were to somehow falter, and if Seattle or LA get to that picture, then it becomes a completely different scenario with common games and conference record. And the Lions have an okay but not great situation there. But again, they have to win out. They have to win 4 straight. And from what you've seen from the Lions this year, particularly in the last 4 weeks, there's not much confidence to say that, yes, this team should be able to win out, even though they are playing the Bucs, who are under 500, the Bears, who are under 500, still playing a rookie quarterback, the Bengals, who are under 500, and then in Week 17, the Packers, and who knows what Green Bay is going to be at that point, because if the Packers are at any sort, Packers and Lions are now tied at 6-6. If the Packers have any sort of shot at the playoffs, and if they win the next 2 weeks, they might, then Aaron Rodgers could come back. And if Aaron Rodgers comes back, that completely changes that Week 17 game. If there's anything on the line at all, and we won't know that for a couple of weeks, but that's really where things sit for the Lions right now, and that would be a Week 17 needing to win to get in playoff scenario facing Aaron Rodgers and the Packers at home. You want to know what that sounds like? That sounds like last year, because that's exactly what happened. The Packers won. The Lions only got into the playoffs because Kirk Cousins and the Washington Redskins lost their season finale, and that allowed the Lions to get in the playoffs. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been in the playoffs last year, and I think going back to your question about Jim Caldwell's job security, there will be a lot more questions about it right now, and maybe even have gone into the Baltimore game. Had they not made the playoffs last year, they signed him to an extension, and now you're seeing what you're seeing now, which is a team that is really struggling to find any sort of rhythm and consistency, and has been doing that for a few weeks.
Well, especially in a year where Aaron Rodgers goes down and the door is sort of opened for them, and the Vikings have taken full advantage of that with Case Keenum. Last thing for you, Mike, Ravens, you got a chance to watch an hour of perhaps the best football the team's played in every phase of the game on Sunday, but as advertised, they stopped the run, they got the quarterback on spot, they pushed him around, they got the ball up in the air, they took the ball away, but the shock of all shocks was, the offense looked credible. The offense looked like an offense that won't embarrass itself if it can make it to January.
Yeah, the Lions kind of tend to do that to people. They did it to the Browns and Deshaun Kaiser as well. The Browns offense looked pretty good, and I think we all know that the Browns offense isn't exactly a peak efficiency offense here. And they played well against Detroit. Detroit's run defense has been really poor in the past month of the year. Obviously, the Ravens didn't run the ball great against the Lions, but I think that the Lions were focusing so much on the run, that's where they got bit on the play action, as we were talking about on the top. What impressed me the most, honestly, about the Ravens, besides some of those play action hits, was that they were able to still play well defensively, even when Jimmy Smith went out. And that was early, and obviously Matthew Stafford was on fire almost from the second Jimmy Smith went out of that game. But they were still able to do what they needed to do defensively, even without their top cornerback. They got to Matthew Stafford enough. They forced a couple of turnovers. Obviously, the pick-six touchdown late, that probably doesn't happen if Matthew Stafford's in the game instead of Jake Rudock, who is getting his first career snaps because of Stafford's hand injury. So even if you take that off of the board, it was still a very impressive win by the Ravens. And haven't watched a ton of AFC football this year, but you look at the records around the conference, and sure, I think that they can be in it without a doubt. Other than New England and Pittsburgh, I think that conference is pretty wide open.
Hey, man, appreciate the visit. Sorry we didn't get a chance to say hello on Sunday. Glad we got a chance to say hello here on the radio. By all means, go enjoy some hockey and some basketball down in that new gym you got down there in Detroit as well, and stay warm this winter. We'll stay in touch, Mike. Appreciate your time.
Anytime, Nestor.
You got it. Mike Rothstein joining us here from ESPN and NFL Nation. You can find him at Mike Rothstein. That's ROTHSTEIN out on Twitter as well. You can find me out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. That's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. Never any commitment, and you can get a little bit bit of inspiration out at Planet of Triumphs as well for the eggnog and pumpkin pie and cookie. And I ate a cookie at the stadium on Sunday. I'm going to be paying for that all week in my yoga class. You can find me also anytime, anywhere on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.